What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here, and I wanted to talk to you about attunement slots. In one of my recent videos, the another 10 things that I would like to see from 5th edition or 2024's 5.5, 5e Advanced, whatever it's going to be, I brought up the concept of changing attunement slots. And I suggested some things in that video, a bunch of you suggested things in the comments, and I wanted to talk about that, get your opinion, see if I'm way off base, what you guys think about it. Have any of you tried these in your games and seen how they work? Before we dive into that, though, I did want to say thank you and a welcome to all of the new subscribers who have recently subscribed to the channel. If you guys are unaware, I do have a ton of these Nerd Immersion stickers here. Now, if this is something you like to get your hands on, if you happen to catch me at a convention, I had these at Gen Con, I'll have them at PAX Unplugged later this year. You can just find me and I'll give you one for free. But if not, you want to send me a self-addressed stamped envelope in the mail to my P.O. Box, which is listed in the video description, I'll just send one back to you. You don't have to feel obligated to send a note or anything else. You can just send me the envelope and I'll swap this and send it out to you. Anyway, let's talk about attunement slots. So the way they work in 5th edition is you get 3 attunement slots. And the way what that is magic items that are typically more on the more powerful scale require attunement, which is a gameplay mechanic that says you can only have 3 of these at a time, and that's kind of a hard limiting factor so that your characters don't get ridiculously overpowered and don't break the concept of bounded accuracy, which is how, even at higher levels in 5th edition, you still have some degree of failure based on how you roll on the d20, aside from just rolling 1s and 20s, in theory anyway. And that's how sort of the magic items are balanced. Right? If I have a very powerful thing like a Holy Avenger longsword, that's super strong. To balance it out, I'm going to make it be attunement, so that means you can choose this and only 2 other items. Now, there are items out there that are non-attunement that are useful and powerful, things like +1, +2, +3 armor, +1, +2, +3 weapons, things like the Cape of the Mountebank, and things like that are powerful and they're non-attunement. So people often strive to get as many of those as they can so that the choice they make when they say, okay, I'm going to give up an attunement slot for this particular item, then, they're not hampering themselves, right? Like if you have a Sunblade weapon, which is essentially a lightsaber, or a +2 sword, you might, depending on the situation, if you want the lightsaber, you just want that damage bonus, you might say, well, let me go for the +2 longsword, and I'll save that attunement slot for something else. Or you might say, you know what, forget the +2 sword, I'll take the lightsaber because lightsaber, right? But in previous editions and in other video games and other RPGs and things like that, that's not the case. Again, I can speak to 3.5 and 3e because I know it. You are limited by the slots on your body, like you would be in most RPGs, right? You can wear 1 pair of gloves, 1 pair of armor, a helmet, maybe goggles, maybe 1 ring on each hand, a pair of pants, a pair of boots. And that's how it was. So you basically, there was even like a 3e character sheet that showed like an outline of like a character with had a little line that would come off and say like helmet slot. And then all the magic items would also tell you what slot they fell into. And then what you would obviously strive to get is if there was any magic items that were a cool item you could have that didn't fall into a given slot, you would go for that one because if you could, because then it was like, I still have this might be a cool anklet that lets me teleport. But anklet isn't a slot, so I can still wear boots and I can still wear pants, but I can have this cool thing that lets me teleport. So, like I said, several people have brought up different ways in which you can utilize magic items and attunements and how to go about changing those. So, there are some folks out there that have just said, no attunement slots, just go wild. And I will say the biggest limiting factor on this is your dungeon master. If your DM doesn't give out magic items that often and they're fairly infrequent, then maybe attunement slots don't matter that much for you. Because if your DM only gives you 1 magic item over the course of your campaign, however long it is, well then yeah, if you have to attune to it, no big deal. It doesn't matter to you because you only have the 1 item, so who cares? Now, me as a DM, I love making magic items. It's actually one of my absolute favorite things to do is making magic items. And whether I watch an anime or a cartoon or read a book or a comic, and it might inspire me to make a cool magic item, so I'll do it, and then I'll be like, ooh, okay, here, I want to put this in the game. But I also have a habit of making a lot of powerful magic items and then giving them out to my players from early on and then throughout the course of the game. So as a little bit of, it's a bummer for me when I come up with a cool new magic item and I want someone to use it, But the stuff they already have, they like so much that they'll never unattune from it, so that it's just like, well, I made this cool item, and ultimately all that's going to happen with it is they're just going to sell it to an NPC and sell it back to me as the DM, and then that cool thing that I made just disappears and is out of the magic item pool. And again, you can argue that, well, Ted, just don't do that, and you're not wrong. Don't make so many powerful magic items that your players aren't ever wanting for magic items. Yeah, that's a problem. I'm acknowledging that that's a problem. But let's talk about the concept of other ways to handle attunement. So one thing that, like I said, we've already discussed the concept of no attunement, and I don't think that that's the right way. One thing that I've heard that I thought was interesting was proficiency bonus. So your proficiency bonus determines the maximum number of magic items you can attune to. So that would start at 2, with, from levels 1 to, 5, or level 1 to 4, you could only attune to 2 magic items. You're a fledgling adventurer that also kind of gives your DM like a meter to go off of, right? Don't give out too many magic items, they're low level. But that ultimately ends at 6 at level 17 plus. And while there doesn't seem to be any in-universe lore reason why you can only attune to 3 magic items, it just seems like that was a number that they picked out of a hat. I can't see, like I said, maybe if there is some lore that I forgot about that says you can only attune to 3 magic items because it takes a part of your soul to attune to a magic item, and if you attune to more than 3, it splits your soul and you die. Maybe that exists somewhere, but I don't recall reading it. So if it's just purely a mechanic for balance purposes, as you go up in level, getting more magic items isn't necessarily a bad thing in my mind. But 6 magic items does seem like a lot. But again, recall that the Artificer, who can gain access to more attunement slots as they level up, eventually ends with being able to attune to, I believe it is 6 magic items at the higher levels. And then they even get additional benefits on top of that for every magic item that they're attuned to. So maybe that, and that is also something I should say that I don't have necessarily the answer for it, but that does take a large portion of what makes an Artificer unique away from it, by removing the concept of it being the only thing that can attune to more than 3 magic items. We might have to give the Artificer some sort of power bump in comparison to offset the fact that they can't attune to as many magic items, or everybody can attune to these. So that would be an interesting concept. I think just flat out making it tied to proficiency bonus. So you start off with a less amount. As you level up, you can attune to more. If you happen to somehow come across one of the magic item that lets you get a +1, I think it's an Iron Stone, that gives you a +1 bonus to your proficiency bonus, that in theory would take up one of the slots, but you'd get a slot back, in theory, by getting that magic item. Another thing I heard, which I also thought was very interesting, was tying it in some degree to your intelligence modifier. And the thought process there is, as we've discussed in the past, intelligence is a often underappreciated ability score unless you happen to be something like a wizard or an artificer where it's part of your class. Most classes, I'm going to say not all, but a lot of folks can just choose to dump intelligence because it's not the best thing for them. Well, maybe if we give you an incentive to choose intelligence by allowing it to increase the number of magic items you can attune to, that might be something. Again, we're still fighting in-universe reasons why having a better intelligence than somebody else might allow you to attune to a magic item. But if we're looking at it purely mechanically, I don't know what that is. Is it 3 magic items normally plus, if you have a 14, a +2, it allows you to attune to 1. How does that work, the scaling, right? I don't think you want to make it tied directly to your intelligence modifier, because what if somebody does choose to have a negative intelligence modifier? Does that mean that they have -1 attunement slots? So you think you have to be careful how you manage that. I've seen other people say, like, half your proficiency bonus +1 or something like that. So you start off with less, you end with a little bit more. A lot of people seem to be keying in on a proficiency bonus rather specifically. So I think that because so many, and this is, again, take this with a grain of salt, right? Just because the majority of people are coming to this conclusion doesn't necessarily mean that that's a good idea. But a lot of people have been saying, I've seen some people tell me they've been doing it as proficiency bonus, number of magic items, and it's worked well for them. So this is, again, me also calling out to all of you. If you've done some other different method for attunement slots, I myself have included like a feat in the game, that if you take this feat, it allows you to take one more magic item, attune to one more magic item. Is giving it as a primary option as a feat, is that good? Is that the method to do it? You're giving up an ability score improvement to get the ability to attune to one more magic item. Depending on the magic item that you choose, like for example, if you were going to give up a bonus to your strength and get a belt of giant strength as a new attunement item, that actually benefits you more in the long run by getting that magic item. So there's definitely instances where a feat for an extra attunement slot is definitely warranted. But I don't think I want it to be something like that. I think I want it to be a little bit different. I think I am leaning more towards proficiency bonus. And again, don't forget, folks, that obviously you as the DM or you as the players in the DM can try these things out and then ultimately decide, you know what, I don't think it works. You don't have to be hard set like from the start. Hey, we're going to do proficiency bonus number of magic items is how many magic items you can attune to. And then you might start to find out very early on, oh, actually, that's not great. You know what, and you could just say, hey, we're going to change it back. And, as the DM, you might say, all right, well, let's adjust, let's figure it out. We'll compensate accordingly. And then you just deal with that. So you don't necessarily have to be locked in, is my point. So I'm not, another thing I've seen people said is slots should be tied to proficiency bonus, but maybe certain items require more attunement slots. That's a concept too, right? Where like, maybe you have a larger pool of attunement slots, but minor magic items only take one slot, but something like a legendary magic item takes more. That could be a concept that we look at, like maybe it's the rarity of the magic item determines how many slots it takes. So maybe it's proficiency bonus plus intelligence modifier, and a legendary magic item takes 3 attunement slots or something like that. I don't know. And then it's, or maybe it's 4, maybe an uncommon magic item takes 1 attunement slot, a rare magic item takes 2, a very rare takes 3, and a legendary takes 4. So you have 4 attunement slots, and you have proficiency bonus plus intelligence modifier. In that instance, I guess you could have, if you had a negative intelligence modifier, it would offset that, so you'd have to think about that in character creation. But then it's like, okay, if that's the case, I now have, say I have a 20 intelligence, which is a plus 5 modifier, and I'm level 17, so now I have 11 attunement slots. I could attune, in that instance, to 2 legendary items, or a whole slew of uncommon, 11 uncommon items, or 2 legendary and something else. Is that too much? I'm kind of leaning, yeah, that might be too much, having the ability, depending on what you choose, 11 uncommon magic items. You could be wand slinging like crazy, but maybe you'd want to have something a little bit better, so you go for a very, very rare item or a legendary item. Like I said, you can obviously also make the argument that 3 attunement slots is more than enough, and there's no issue to change that. I agree with that as well. I understand all aspects of this argument, but I'm trying to workshop the concept of rolling out in my own homebrew campaign going forward. Were I to change the way attunement slots work, what do we think, as a collective we, is the best balance to go a little bit more than just the hard 3, but not too much that it's going to be insane and we're going to just be completely wrecking the power balance of the game. Again, 3 was designed to fit the current power balance of the game, but as we've seen with races, feats, and subclasses, certain things are just power creep is a thing. We are seeing classes and races and things be better than the existing ones. We've even seen this with certain magic items. Take a look at the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything magic items. What constitutes a rare magic item in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything is drastically different than what constitutes a rare magic item in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I would think to any of the books from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything versus, like, I don't know, a plus, like a Rod of the Packkeeper, a Wand of the War Mage, for example, or certain things like that, or even a Rod of the Packkeeper. You have a ton more magic items that you can get via all of the different books, the Fulminating Treatise and things like that. I'm going to pull it up right now and just look at it. This is a book that's rare, and it gives you a whole bunch of new spells, and it gives you a bunch of other options and things you can do. Same thing with all of the different sorcerer magic items. There's a ton of stuff we've seen where magic items get supremely better, what things they can do for the rarity that they are. So perhaps the attunement mindset should modify with that. Like I said, there is no right or wrong answer ultimately. This is just a discussion that I wanted to present to all of you and get your feedback and your thoughts in the comments down below. Especially, like I said, to the folks who have tried other attunement methods in their own game and they've worked relatively well, and it hasn't either made you as the DM want to pull your hair out or made you as the players feel just ridiculously overpowered and you steamrolled everything. So please let me know. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.